Hello, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Jess.
She's the traumatized.
And she's the abandoned.
And welcome to our podcast, where we talk about true crime, spooky things, and everything in between.
And today we're going to be talking about some horrifying history. Which I'm really excited. This is hard.
Yeah.
This is hard. This is a hard one. But it's horrifying and we're here. And it's part of our history. How was your week?
I got contacts again.
Yeah, you did.
So
let's go.
If it takes me a while to get through my story, because I'm still getting used to having them, bear with.
It's going to be great.
We had great makeup days today. It didn't take me
Struggle buzz
3 times to do my makeup today.
It looks really pretty. What happened to me this week? Work was crazy busy. I dabbled a little bit in editing and that was fun.
Yeah, Jess is trying to lift some of the load that I have to carry with the podcast. So we've decided that she's gonna do like a rough cut, like cut out all the bloopers, deleted scenes, shit we don't need. And so I taught her how to do everything. And then she just decided to completely edit the whole thing.
You haven't even listened to it yet. Just wait. Just fucking wait.
She was like, I don't understand. It's taking me 3 hours to do 20 minutes. I'm like, Jess, you're not supposed to be editing it like it's the final product. You just go through it real quick.
I full sent it.
Yeah.
I was taking out milliseconds between our sentences. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's definitely fun. But that's it. That, and I realized how many times we say I started recognizing our ums, which is funny. Like in the middle. Yeah. Anyways. It's like, oh, that's one. Anyway. Do you want to know what today's fun fact is? I actually have 2.
Oh yeah. We do that.
we do that. This is 12, I think.
You said doo-doo.
I did.
It's fine.
Jesus.
We're not 12.
Did you know that the giant squid has the largest eyes in the world?
Wow.
Also, let's take a second to appreciate the fact that when we blink, our eyes don't make any noise.
Okay. Why?
Imagine if they did.
Ew, no. Thank you.
Yep. I'm here for the fun.
Fun? That's fun? Okay.
Anyway, what are you telling me about today? What's your horrifying history?
I seem to have a pattern, but today I'm going to be talking about Radium Girls.
Ooh.
And
okay.
Radium.
Radium fever. No. Okay.
Not that kind of radium.
Okay.
Radium.
Radium. Yep.
Radium. Today we know radium to be a very dangerous element, one that can be used to help treat certain cancers, but it wasn't the case 100 years ago. 100 years ago, radium was all the rage and was used in numerous industrial and consumer applications.
Interesting. Okay.
So what is radium? If you guys watched our conspiracy theories, episode 7, where we talked about conspiracy theories, you would know a little bit about radium because I talk about it in that episode as well. But radium is a radioactive substance found in nature. It is produced by the radioactive decay of uranium.
Uranium fever. Sorry.
In 1898, Marie and Pierre Curie, 2 of the most prominent pioneers in researching radioactivity, discovered this element. Radium was particularly intriguing because it glowed in the dark, and soon a radium craze began after it was observed that radium could treat cancer Many people mistakenly thought it could also be used to treat other diseases as well.
Okay.
So before long, it was being sold in pharmacies for all kinds of ailments.
They obviously did testing for that, though, right?
No.
Okay.
They saw that radium. They saw that radium could cure cancer, and they were like, "Send it. It can cure everything."
Everything. Okay.
It was also believed that radium could prevent aging, and companies sold radium toothpaste, radium cosmetics, and even radium water, which people would drink.
Okay.
Around this time, American inventor William J. Hammer went to Paris and obtained a sample of radium salt crystals from the Curies. Hammer discovered that by mixing the radium with glue and zinc sulfide, he could make glow-in-the-dark paint. Which brings us into the story. The U.S. Radium Corporation, who would use this paint to manufacture wristwatches with radium-painted dials. The corporation set up its factories in New Jersey and recruited dozens of young women to paint the watch dials because their small hands were well-suited for the exacting and detailed work.
We got tiny hands.
These girls were encouraged to paint up to 200 watches a day, getting paid about 5 cents a watch.
200, it's like $100.
To verify?
No. Viewers will, and don't at me. It's fine. I have had coffee. I can't even use that as an excuse. I can't even say I've been drinking either. I don't know. I have no excuses. I used to be really good at math, and then I smoked a lot of pot in college.
It's $10.
Damn it! One too many zeros. It's $10 a day.
If they got all 200 watches done.
Okay.
And they probably didn't. To get the numbers small enough, the women were encouraged to lick their brushes to keep the tip pointed and prevent the paint from drying.
Imagine wetting a wet paper towel and putting that right beside you and having it do the exact same thing.
Remember, they don't know that radium is dangerous at this point.
They don't know that we know.
They don't know what we know. And of course, doing this method would mean that the girls would swallow a little bit of radium each time they licked the paintbrush tip. In 1924, a woman named May Keene, I don't know which, was hired at a factory in Waterbury, Connecticut. Her first day, she remembers, she didn't like the taste of the radium paint. It was gritty. She wouldn't put the brush in her mouth, and only a few days after she started, she was asked if she would like to quit, and she did. She was one of the very lucky ones. It was also said that the Radium Girls themselves would glow from the radium dust.
That's not funny.
Their hair, faces, hands, arms, necks, and dresses, the underclothes, even the corsets of the dial painters would like luminescent just from them like sitting and working in the room. One thing that they would also do is they would wear like their nicest dresses to work. So as they're working, like their dresses would get covered in the dust, and then they would go out dancing, and their dresses would be so pretty, glowing in the dark while they're dancing.
So pretty.
All along, the company assured the women that their work was perfectly safe. Obviously, we know that this is not the case. And it wasn't long before the Radium Girls began to experience the physical ravages of their exposure. In growing numbers, Radium Girls became deathly ill, experiencing many of the same agonizing symptoms as each other. Because as we learned in our conspiracies episode, which if you haven't heard that, it's a good listen. Again, episode 7, conspiracies.
Go do it.
Do it.
Why are you still here? No, I'm just kidding. Listen to this one. Listen to that one.
But in that episode, we learned that the human body mistakes radium for calcium. So it filled their bones as calcium would, irradiating them from within. Radium poisoning includes anemia, sore throat, deteriorating jaw, soft teeth, spontaneous bone fractures, and aches.
It's the teeth in the jaw for me.
If you don't want to see disgusting pictures, do not look up deteriorating, like radium poisoning. Like,
I thought you were to show me one, and I was like,
no. I wouldn't. No, I don't have any disgusting pictures.
I mean,
but it's like, I mean, like, this was the day, like, I remember reading a story about, like, radium water. This guy would drink radium water because he thought it was, like, curing something, and then his, like, entire jaw just falls off.
Oh my God. And the people who are using it as toothpaste?
Yeah, it's just, it's like, I wish you knew what we know.
Oh my God. Imagine in like 100 years, people are going to look back on us and say the same shit.
True. For years, the company would deny that the girls' deteriorating health had anything to do with the work that they were doing. Because of the growing controversy, the company themselves financially commissioned an independent study, which concluded that the painters had died from the effects of radium exposure.
That backfired.
But obviously, this finding is not what they wanted to hear. So they commissioned additional studies that came in the opposite conclusion to discredit the girls who had taken ill. So I'm assuming they did some shady shit. It's like, don't say what they said, okay? And we'll be good. But in 1925, a pathologist named Harrison Martland developed a test that proved conclusively that radium had poisoned the watch painters by destroying their bodies from the inside. The radium industry tried to discredit Martland's findings, but the Radium Girls themselves fought back. Many knew that their days were numbered, but they wanted to do something to help their colleagues still working with the deadly substance. Initial attempts to receive compensation from U.S. Radium were futile. Medical and legal costs were enormous, and the U.S. Radium was well defended by a team of lawyers and held a prominent position as a government contractor, because I think for most of the watches that they were making was going towards the military. Eventually, dial painter Grace Fryer decided to sue U.S. Radium in 1925, but it took her 2 years to find an attorney willing to take the case.
Seriously? Wow.
In May 1927, Fryer and 4 other dial painters, Edna Hussman, Albina Laurice, Quinta McDonald, and Catherine Schaub, filed suit in the New Jersey State Supreme Court for $250,000 each in compensation for medical expenses and pain. Fryer left the dial factory after about 3 years in 1920 for a better job as a bank teller. About 2 years later, her teeth started falling out and her jaw developed a painful abscess. She consulted a number of dentists and doctors, but none had ever seen such serious bone decay. Finally, in 1925, one doctor suggested that the problems might be caused by her years as a dial painter. The case quickly grew into a media phenomenon, and the press dubbed the 5 young women as the Radium Girls, which we know them as now. Of course, U.S. Radium denied all charges of knowingly poisoning its dial painters and launched a campaign of disinformation. And this is why I say that they probably did a little under the table things with their testing before. In 1925, the corporation hired Frederick Flynn of the Institute of Public Health at Columbia University to give Fryer a medical examination. And he found her health as good as my own, in quotation. It was later discovered that Flynn was not a licensed medical doctor.
Of course he wasn't. That makes sense.
But an industrial toxicologist on contract with U.S. Radium to try and refute the Harvard health team's report. As dial worker after dial worker fell ill, U.S. Radium attempted to tarnish the women's reputations by claiming that they were suffering from syphilis.
Sorry. Yep. Syphilis does, in fact, decay your jaw and attack your bones from the inside.
I think what they were trying to do is be like, oh, these women are loose. You can't believe anything they say.
Oh my God.
Legal maneuvering in the Radium Girls case delayed the first hearing until January 1928. By that time, it was painfully clear that the 5 women were seriously ill.
Oh.
And when the defense was granted a 5-month adjournment in April, the public outcry was swift and fierce. A trial date was set for June, but just days before it was to begin, the Radium Girls settled out of court for $10,000 each, plus coverage of medical expenses and a $600 annuity until death. So annually, they would get $600 from them until they died.
Hell yeah. Okay. No.
McDonald died in 1929 at the age of 34. The 34-year-old Fryer and Schaub, 30, died in 1933, followed by Hussman in 1939 at age 37, and Larice, the last of the Radium Girls, died in 1946 at 51.
Wow. Holy hell.
That's the story of the Radium Girls.
Oh, great. We're going to end on a positive note. I'm glad we do that to each other.
But I do have more. Although the Radium Girls didn't last long, the legacy of them cannot be understated, especially for the Manhattan Project. Manhattan Project safety regulations were based on those of the radium dial factories, which were much improved by the time. So, as one official from the Atomic Energy Commission would later note, he said, if it hadn't been for those dial painters, the Manhattan Project's management could have reasonably rejected the extreme precautions that were urged on it, and thousands of workers might well have been or might still be in great danger. So if it wasn't for the Radium Girls, they wouldn't have had like all the protection and precautions that they had at the Manhattan Project. Also, the Center of Human Radiology was established at Argonne National Laboratory in 1968. The primary purpose of the center was providing medical examination for living dial painters. The project also focused on the collection of information and, in some cases, tissue samples from the radium dial painters. When the project ended in 1993, detailed information of 2,403 cases had been collected, which led to a book on the effects of radium on humans. So they kind of studied how radium affected the body and which different types of radium affected what. It also considers the induction of a range of different forms of cancer as a result of internal exposure to radium and its daughter nucleosides, which are like the different types of radium. The book used data from radium dial painters, people who were exposed as a result of the use of radium containing medical products, and other groups of people who had been exposed to radium. So it's kind of like the scientific aspect of that. There is another impact that it had, a historical impact. The Radium Girls saga holds an important place in history of both the field of health physics and the labor rights movement. The right of individual workers to sue for damages from corporations due to labor abuse was established as a result of the Radium Girls case.
Nice.
Okay. And in the wake of the case, industrial safety standards were demonstrably enhanced for many decades. Plus, also, their case was among the first in which a company was held responsible for the health and safety of employees. The lawsuit and resulting publicity of it was a factor in the establishment of occupational disease labor law, as well as led to a variety of reforms, as well as to the creation of U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which we most know as OSHA.
There we go. So, I mean, to see it, you hate for it to have to gotten to that
level.
For people to actually be like, oh, hey, we should be safe at work, you know? But I'm glad they did.
Although U.S. Radium Factory in New Jersey was the most infamous case of radium dial painting, it was far from the only one.
I don't like that.
It is estimated that by the 1920s, as many as 4,000 workers were hired at companies across the United States and Canada to paint radium dials. Radium watches would continue to be manufactured until 1968, although the safety regulations obviously were drastically improved. But that's the story of the Radium Girls.
Like, maybe not licking the brushes.
Yeah, obviously they don't lick the brushes, and they were given protective gear.
Don't put that stuff in your mouth.
Yeah. There is also a movie called The Radium Girls. Is it Netflix?
I don't know, but we should watch it.
We should watch it. That's my story.
My turn?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to be talking about 1907 Monongah Mine collapse that happened in West Virginia. It's like Marion County in West Virginia. It was known and is known as one of the worst accidents in America's history.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know about it, but it's a thing. By the late 19th century, West Virginia was now the national leader in production of coal.
You know who else produces coal? North Dakota.
South Dakota.
No! You bitch. Side story. I think it was when we were like in 7th and 8th grade. We took a trip out to our capital city, which is like in the Midwest, like south, like middle of the state, kind of westish south.
Okay.
Anyways, it was like a yearly trip that like every class goes or whatever.
Yeah.
And out there we have coal. We have a shit ton of coal. So like we get to drive our bus down into like the coal area, because like in North Dakota it's just like surface coal. If
so
that makes sense.
There's no mountains. It's just like you go down and there's coal. Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah, so like
That's
we
different.
drove our bus down into there, and like
Ooh.
I think our teacher got to keep a piece of coal or whatever, and then like we drove out. But I don't remember much of it, but I remember we had to scrub our fucking bus afterwards. Like at a gas station, we're all like hitting the windows. Like each person was assigned a window.
Oh my god, child labor, guys! Come on, that's not a thing. That's hilarious. Okay, so while West Virginia was the national leader in the production of coal, it actually fell very far behind other major coal producing states in regulating mining conditions. So while they were the national leader in production, they were really shitty on their
safety.
The important things.
Right.
In addition to poor economic conditions, West Virginia had a higher mine death rate than any other state.
That's an issue.
Nationwide. Now, this is nationwide. It's a very big issue.
Okay.
Nationwide, a total of 3,242 Americans were killed in mining accidents in 1907.
How many? Sorry.
3,242.
Nationwide.
That is nationwide. It is brutal work and extremely low paying. Like, we're talking about 5 cents on the hour, kind of.
Yeah.
Crazy. I wanted to, because like I don't know, so I wanted to go in and look at like an average worker, a day of an average worker in the mine, to which I found that there are actually different levels to mine workers. The boys start off and they could be breakers. 9-year-old boys can walk into the mine and they work as breakers. They basically sit on a hard bench in a screening room where a large chute passes the broken coal through. And from the coal, they have to pick out the pieces of slate and rock and make sure that it's like a sorting. They're like a sorting.
Okay.
It's not extremely difficult work, but it's confining and very uncomfortable because they're sitting on the bench, hard bench all day, bending over constantly. And their hands would get cut and scarred by the sharp pieces of slate and coal.
Right.
Not to mention they're breathing in that coal dust all day at 9 years old.
Yeah.
It is known to be extremely hot in the summer and extremely cold in the winter, especially in West Virginia. Every breaker boy wants to become a door boy. So this is how you get like promoted. But you have to be under 14 years of age to be a door boy.
Okay. And what does a door boy do?
So it's not as laborious as the breaker. However, their job is more monotonous. So they must be on hand when the first trip of cars enters in the morning and remain there until the last comes out at night. And their duty is to open and shut the door as men and cars pass through, which controls and regulates the ventilation of the mine as well. They are alone in darkness and silence all day, waiting for the cars to come through.
Did any of them just like break psychotically? Like,
I don't know. Some of the boys' main recreations were whittling and whistling.
Why are they boys? They should not be boys.
I'm shrugging for those of you who can't see me. I don't know. So next we have a driver, which is the next promotion of young gentlemen in the mine. When the mules are kept in the mines, the driver boy will go down the shaft in time to clean and harness the mule, bring him to the foot of the shaft, hitch him for the trip of empty cars before 7 a.m. Because that's when the first trip is. They have to do all this before 7 a.m. No, not for me.
Not for me.
This trip of cars varies from 4 to 7 according to the number of miners. So he has to make this trip either 4 or 7 times, depending on how many miners they have working that day, what their plans are. It's crazy. The driver takes the empty cars to the working places and then returns them loaded to the foot of the shaft. These boys are in constant danger of not only a falling roof or exploding gases, but of being crushed by the cars themselves. Fun thing.
Okay.
When the driver reaches the ripe old age of 20, he either becomes a runner or a laborer in the mines. And they usually become the laborers. Now, the laborers are actually not theoretically miners yet. They work under the miners and do the dirty work. It's like, I had no idea all this existed. Also, they're young children. Like, it's insane to me.
That's the issue for me.
It's insane to me.
I mean, most companies, like military, most companies have like a hierarchy. They have, you know, steps.
That's what this kind of reminded me of, like a stepping ladder. But
they're boys, they're children.
To start at the age of 8 and 9?
Yeah, that's insane. I don't like that.
They would just go to work with their fathers. That's it. It's a family business.
Yeah.
So the average day of a miner, they wake up at 5 a.m. and enter the mine shortly after 6. In some cases, these guys have to walk a mile or so underground to reach the place of work, carrying all this massive equipment with them. And then they spend anywhere from 8 to 10 hours in that mine. They face many dangers each day, including a falling roof, being burned to death with the exploding gases, or, you know, blown to pieces by a premature blast that they're using to break apart the mine as they continue getting it. You know,
just normal work things.
Stuff. During the last 20 years, over 10,000 men and boys have been killed, and 25,000 have been injured due to the mining industry. The average age of those people killed is 32, but it also said /12. So I don't know if it was the average age of men was 32 and boys was 12.
Or average age 12 to 32.
Right? Maybe. That's more of a mean than an average. However. Yeah, I got math on you. Now we're going to talk about one of the worst coal mining accidents in American history. So going back to 1907. The scene is Marion County in West Virginia. It's a booming town of 3,000 people. More than 1,000 men worked in those coal mines. So a third of the town worked in the coal mines. The coal business was so rapidly growing that scouts would actually travel across the ocean to recruit fresh workers who had no idea the brutality and lack of standards and safety precautions that they were in store for.
I feel like that's America's like solution for any hard labor. Like, let's just go get immigrants.
They aren't told that the fatal accident frequency rate is twice as high than Germany, nearly 3 times as high than England, and more than 4 times as high than France. So our fatal accident is that much worse. The coal miners do not have a union at this point, and there are no federal laws to protect them or help them if they get injured. As stated before, children, some as young as 8 years old, would work the mines along with their fathers. About 10 a.m. on December 6th, an underground explosion occurred in one section, with a larger blast following in a separate area. This time of day, the mine was full of workers, and many of them were younger boys. The explosion was strong enough to collapse the entrance of the mine, as well as destroy the ventilation system. And because of this, poisonous gases collected in the mine shaft. The vast majority of miners were killed. Those who survived the initial blast likely perished from suffocation or poisoning.
Oh.
The cause? Yeah. Imagine. No, don't, because that's a big fear of yours. Imagine. If you haven't, you should go check out our episode on greatest fears, because
I hate caves.
The cause of the disaster was never fully understood. Official reports as to the cause of the explosion were changed, and in some cases included blame on the weather or minor carelessness.
I'm sorry, how does the weather cause an explosion? What?
There was an author who authored a book about this. He speculates in his book that the real cause was that they didn't clean up the coal dust in those days. They only had one watering can on a cart, and the cart was incapable of carrying sufficient amounts of water to remove the coal dust, which is probably why they had you clean the coal dust off your school bus. Full circle. They disregarded most of the cardinal safety practices that are in place today, which when I first read that, I thought it said canary practices, because you take a canary into the mines with you because it alerts you if there's poisonous gases. That's not what it says, but I thought that's what it said. Maybe that's a cardinal practice. I don't know. Yeah, they just didn't use them. Also, the Fairmount Mining Company installed a door between mines number 6 and number 8 to make it easier for miners to transport coal. What is crazy to me is that this practice was outlawed in all European mines and every state except for West Virginia.
And back then, obviously, they were using like oil and gas lamps too, right?
Mm-hmm.
They weren't using, there was no electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So
even electricity is scary with like coal dust and stuff like that, because it's still, if there's any sort of short or wire, it could still ignite. More than 361 miners died in Monongah accident that day. The mine was back in operation within 3 weeks after the explosion, and despite the loss of those 2 mines and all of the costs that came along with it, it was a profitable year for the coal company.
What?
Mm-hmm. During this time, mine disasters in the U.S. were becoming increasingly common. I had given you the death count of the year of 1907 prior.
Mm-hmm.
Government regulations in Europe had diminished mining accidents there, and many Americans began lobbying for stronger federal safety rules for mining companies. In 1910, the government established the Bureau of Mines, an agency responsible for reducing mining accidents, but strict safety standards were not enforced till the mid-20th century.
Of course.
But they made the committee. In 1921, thousands of miners marched to Logan County to protest the low pay and unbearable working conditions, and is considered the largest labor uprising in the U.S. history.
Oh, wow.
They had enough. They were done. In 2003, to commemorate the explosion, the Italian commune of San Giovanni in Fiore, from which many of the miners had immigrated from, erected a memorial to those killed in the disasters. A lot of miners that were working in the mine at the time of collapse were Italian immigrants. Okay. So they ended up doing a lot of stuff to commemorate the explosion. In 2007, the Monongah Heron, a statue dedicated to the miners' widows, and it was unveiled in 2007. The monument was erected due to the efforts of Father Joseph Briggs, who was a local Catholic priest and a historian of the Monongah disaster. In that same year, to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the explosion, the Italian Regine of Maloise presented a bell to the town of Monongah. Today, that bell sits in the Monongah town square. And that's the story of the 1907 Monongah Mine collapse and the horrifying history that was coal mining that we still use today. There are a lot more safety standards. Obviously, they are unionized.
We're just like, it's so weird. There's like an explosion, sweep. Let's reopen. Nothing happened. Like, that's what it feels like.
3 weeks.
Like, did they even recover the bodies? Like,
it said that the mine just collapsed, and they never reopened it, so I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
That's crazy to me. So that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it,
I don't know if that's the word you want to use.
If it was educational or informational for you.
Yeah.
Don't forget to follow us. Pretty please leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Hello. Hi. Like and subscribe. It means the world to us. You don't know. It's so cool to see new people. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our username is TTATA Podcast. We are posting our updates when our episodes go live on time, as they do every Saturday. Nobody forgets ever.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Ever. You know what? As long as they release on Saturday, I feel like people are okay with that. Okay, if I have released it on Sunday.
Are you here next Saturday?
I am.
Oh my gosh.
I am so excited.
If you aren't following us on YouTube, I highly suggest you check it out because we might be going to a cave and we might record it. So we're going to put Jess's iPhone to the test.
Oh,
Big
I'm so
hit
excited.
as video quality.
I am so excited. I am so excited. I'm really excited. I don't know if you guys can tell. I'm really excited. Yeah.
So check us out on YouTube and look for the bonus video. Ooh, that will be
TikToks,
uploaded.
maybe some surprise TikToks we can do too. We'll be hanging out all next week, guys. I'm so excited. By the time you see this, we'll be back.
Yeah.
But
no, yeah. We would have already had done the things we're talking about doing.
We're in the future or in the past. I don't know. Anyway. Thanks for listening. Next week we're going to be covering myths and legends and or mythical creatures, and I'm so excited. I think I know what you're doing. I think we talked about it, and I think we're just going to be doing mythical. Well, no, I don't know if mine's technically a mythical creature. I think it's more of a legend. Ooh, wait, though.
Maybe. What?
Wait, so is next week going to be chaotic chats, or is next week going to be mythical legends and creatures?
Oh yeah, no, next week is gonna be I don't know, what are we doing?
I don't know anymore.
All right, so inspirational quote of the week is life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it.
So true. It's so true.
From Dennis P. Kimbrough. I think that's how you say it. But yeah.
Okay. So true. Okay. Bye, guys. Go away now.
Bye.
Bye.